The background about me, I became a drama therapist because I saw the impact of it in my previous job when I used to work in communications, looking at grants that had an impact for comic relief. And yeah, I was really impressed with the fundamental shift in thinking that I witnessed. And 9 years on, sorry, not 9 years on, that was in 2003. And for the last 9 years, I've been working in Leeds EIP. Originally, some of you might have heard of John Casson. He was my supervisor. He's written a book about drama therapy and psychosis. And he oversaw a trial which was based on seeing if we could address health inequalities, really, by bringing disengaged service users into a group, which was pretty tough because they were people who were really scared of being with other people. But the results of that are fortunately on the NICE website, and the link is there, and I guess everyone will have access to that afterwards. So that will give you more information about that project. I've carried on working there because I'm really passionate about the impact of using drama. And there's a chapter which is about the impact of that on one client that I work with, and that's going to be in the Practical Guide to Hearing Voices, which is, I think, going to be published in October now. So that's me. So just to touch on the principles that I operate under in EIP drama therapy, and they very much echo what Sarah said earlier, the idea of sort of space to reflect and to share that reflection, looking at a third item, whether it's a piece of art or an object, like, for example, quite often we might use, you know, the ultimate open question: where in the world would you feel safe, for example? And I think that's what's really important in my practice, which has been very much built on John Casson's work, is that power is really, really writ large in all the work we do. So the client, the service user, controls the elements. They control who comes, how frequently we meet, and what material we use. And there are 3 strands to the material, and it really depends on what is most comfortable in the moment. Some people feel most comfortable with embodiment, some with projection, some with role. Now, those words are similar to Sarah. Those words come from very early experiences in childhood. So the first form of creative expression when we're babies is embodiment. We use our body to express when we're tiny babies, and then we become quite good at projecting our idea of the world onto other things. And then we start to explore roles and how we fit with other people and relate to other people. By the time we're about 6 or 7, we're able to play games and interact with other children. So it's really using those ideas. Embodiment might be about getting back in touch with our sense of self and where we end, using relaxation and imagination, imagery to get back in touch with our body, and trauma work is obviously to do with that. Projection onto an object, and thinking about roles. Some people are able to talk about what they want more or less of, what roles they want to take more of, what roles they want less of, what roles they notice other people cast them in. So there's a real fluidity. So we're building up a fluidity that anything is possible and these things can change. So those are the principles. And I thought I'd share some service user comments at this point. So Zuki, that's a pseudonym for somebody that helped me write the chapter. And she was very taken with embodiment. The idea that you can use your body to understand your feelings. There are so many thousands of emotions that are not represented in language. Now I realize that I can identify them without words If I identify the emotions non-verbally, they may not progress to voices, and certainly they don't get strong. When she was in group, she said, when I get voice attacks out of nowhere and I'm feeling depressed, someone gives you a chunk of their emotions through action. You get their movement and it takes you to a new place, and you've never been there before, you've never experienced before. Over time, this helps you become more fluid. So there's a lot about becoming fluid in that safe space, that dramatic space, that artistic space. Dr. K, that's a pseudonym for someone who loved the program Neighbours, and Dr. Kennedy was a character. And metaphor was the thing that really helped him. Embodiment, projection, and role. And it was metaphor, it was using projection onto ideas like Australia. Australia was the place he didn't feel angry. And he knew he needed to find a way of being able to be with people, because he was really keen to attend a residential detox with 6 other people, and that wasn't going to be possible. So we started with the space being Australia, and that made it tolerable. Gradually, he was able to come on his own by using Star Wars metaphors and the equipment of Star Wars, weaving through people to get to the bus and to get safely to his sessions. And interestingly, he went on to do the detox, he went on to do CBT, and it was only at discharge, which was 10 months later, he told us about another metaphor, which is the one I've included here. And this one now keeps him safe, he uses it. I've seen Jurassic Park where they say, don't move because they can't see you if you don't move. That's what I say to myself as I walk past them. I think he's talking about velociraptors. Don't get me wrong, I don't like crowds, but I do go out and shop and I can handle it. Jurassic Park is like a joke in my head. I'm confident, I feel confident to attend detox. I'm now sober, I now attend AA groups, I can publicly speak. So the last one that I've included here is from Blue, who was a character, a great person that I met. He really wanted to access groups, but he really refused to be with men because he was frightened of what the voices would do. So we use theatre conventions to understand the voices and use role work. And this is what he said: unless you talk about the voices, they're going to get so much worse. Like when I first started here, I was up for violence, but now I can differentiate between the ideas spouted by the voices and decide which voices are good and which are not, which ones to follow through with and which to not. Drama therapy helped with this, and I can now get into groups of 4, 5, or even 6 people for half an hour to an hour. So you can see that it really can help with making those changes and accessing what the other services. I mean, I think Harry mentioned that there was a lot of good work going on. And I think what happens is that for about 20% of the service users in our EIP service, they're not able to access anything, perhaps because they're just too traumatized by the idea of engaging. And so for some of them, grounding with drama therapy, with whatever it is that's okay of those 3 methods, is enough to get them quite quickly to using all the other services. I mean, someone like Dr. Kennedy, he wasn't interested in drama at all, but it did enable him to get the things he needed. And then there are people who just can't make sense of things, so there's nothing verbal, and then we can co-produce those positive solutions without language. And I think I see a lot of people who just don't, because of their communications issues, that people aren't really clear what's going on, so they call it diagnostic uncertainty. What I think is significant to share here, particularly because this is a global session, and I hope this is relevant to everyone, is that I think one of the great things about art therapy is that use of a third thing between the 2 people, the artistic object, whatever it is. It means that the language comes from the client and it's not imposed. It's not a kind of construct that other therapies, in the medical model, it can be very imposed. In session 3, we must be doing this. Well, it's sort of the opposite. It's totally bespoke. And that gives space for cultural language to come from the client, and that seems to really help with Black and Asian minority ethnic groups. My client base appears to be more than half from those communities, and also a high number of people who are dealing with complexities such as autism, or perhaps being deaf, or having some kind of learning disability. All those things contribute to that confused picture that means the sort of standard pathways are really difficult to access. So what I found is that 45% of people quickly move to 6 sessions. Within 6 sessions, 39% get to a group because that's what they want, and they might complete a group. And about 16% of people aren't interested in groups at all, and they continue. So what I did want to say is answering that second question, why isn't it mainstream? This is my passion. I've spent 9 years trying to figure out how to answer this question. Why is there no research? Well, one reason is because there isn't any research for complex disorders. And when you work with people who are stuck in the margins, I think they don't get included in research anyway. So it's not surprising that there's not any research in arts, certainly in drama therapy. What I also think is important is power is a massive factor. And all the clients in those first 3 years, we did quite a lot of consultation, and every single one of them said they didn't want to be part of a randomized control trial where some of them would have to wait for therapy in order to create that methodology. So that's really difficult because I'm giving them the power, so I'm not prepared to break that bond. And then there's all the obvious things, you know, that if people are really struggling, they're not going to be able to complete all the barriers that we know, and I'm encouraging them not to share unless they want to. And then there's how do you communicate about non-verbal engagement. So, you know, in 9 years, I've done everything I can. I spent a lot of time on this, and I've come up with about 2 things. The quotes that you've seen, and we're collecting more and more feedback from service users, which is really helpful. And then there's, we have done pre and post measurements, and we have shared this. This was a poster that was taken to, I think it was the BPS conference a year or 2 ago. And what we have found with the social and occupational functioning assessment is that there does seem to be a consistent 13-point lift. So 13 points, that's sort of 13% in how people are able to function. And that's a very reduced thing. I'm not a fan of it, but that fits within the research methodology. It's a problem. We haven't got any research. And so we remain at the margins. I know of 1 or 2 other drama therapists in the UK and 1 in Australia. And we're constantly being challenged by psychologists, rightly, where's the evidence? But we're not the only ones. And this is the last slide that I want to share with you, that talking therapies are good. If people can talk, then you can collect data, but it's not enough. And I think that the drama therapy that I've done certainly shows how people can access things, but they need the space at the beginning of their time to really ground themselves and become more stabilized. And this report that's just been published this month, I think last week, it really captures this from the point of primary care. So the GPs have come together to write this report with the King's Fund, and they're arguing that the complex needs are not being met by mental health services. People with psychosis can't fulfill that they're not accepted into IAPT. And last year, 26% of referrals for CAMS were rejected because they're too complicated, they don't fit into a box. And I believe that we arts therapists are there for when people don't fit into a box. And I just wonder how we all come together to encourage commissioners to accept that sometimes it's really difficult to prove something in a box-like way, and maybe there's still a reason to have it. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you very much for listening.